COVID-19 has changed our lives in so many ways. And for many, COVID has exposed holes in systems, a lack of leadership, disparities in communities and relationships, and has changed how we navigate through life. So, all of these changes, especially for those who are graduating and have unfortunately lost someone during this time, deserves a moment to grieve. So, my hope is that this conversation provides space to be open and honest around the grief that is associated with COVID and with this time. So please feel free to share your experiences during this presentation. You're more than welcome to type your comments in the chat. There is also will be an opportunity for you to unmute yourself to be able to also engage in dialogue as well. So what I will do is at this point, I will go ahead and share a presentation. I will be back on with you all periodically to show my face, but I wanted to make sure that you all are getting information as we go on with this presentation. So before I begin this presentation, I wanted to ensure that those of you attending has my contact information. So I wanted to be sure to include that in this presentation as well. My website along with my social media handles are included. So you are more than welcome to screenshot this information as well as follow the Facebook and Instagram pages. There is a wealth of information that can be used for any follow-up reflections or to share with your loved ones. You all are also welcome to browse my website. There are educational videos on there as well as information that can be helpful for you during this time. So although my intention is not to cause harm to anyone receiving this information, I am also aware that people can absorb subject matters such as these differently. So as a mental health provider, I think it's critical to provide a disclaimer in all my work to ensure that participants are aware that maximizing your participation includes being vulnerable and aware of your responses to the information that's shared. So if at any point in time during this presentation, you are experiencing any positive or negative responses, please write them down. Also, please ensure that you are doing what's necessary to take care of yourselves during this presentation. So if that means taking a moment to just take a walk, muting yourself, just getting some air, maybe eating a snack, please make sure you do what's necessary to take care of yourself. I will also include some helpful resources for you at the conclusion of this presentation. So please be sure that you are making notes of those things as well. So I wanted to take a brief moment before we really dive into this conversation to have a moment of silence for those individuals that have been lost during this time. Whether they have succumbed to COVID or whether it's been from other causes, I wanted to ensure that I acknowledged each of these people during this presentation. If you happen to have lost someone during this time, I wanted to acknowledge them. I wanted their voices to be present in this presentation. So please feel free to type their name in the chat. Again, I wanted to just take a brief moment just to acknowledge those that we have lost during this time. Thank you so much. I want to lift up your mom during this time. I want to lift up those within the community, an SSS counselor. I want to lift them up during this presentation. We've had so many community members, again, whether it's through COVID or through other means that we have lost during this time, and many people had not had the opportunity to properly grieve. So I just wanted to take a brief moment of silence to acknowledge them. Thank you so very much for that. The next thing I wanted to do really quickly is I believe in engaging presentation. So I wanted to check in with each of you. I know we have quite a few people on here. You're more than welcome to either type in the chat or you can unmute yourself. We want to make sure that no one's talking on top of each other. So please be mindful of that. But I wanted to check in to see how you all are doing. How are you managing during this time? What are some of the issues that you are having? So I wanted to kind of give opportunity for that. So just let me know how you are. Like I said, you're more than welcome to type in the chat or you can speak.
This is Margaret. I'll start. My story is interesting, and I'm very glad for this opportunity today. My mother died on February 28th, and I was off for a week attending to her funeral and her wake. And then in the week I came back, we were faced with closing the buildings because of COVID. Since that time my mother passed, we're pretty convinced that she was COVID-19, and she got it on the cruise ship we were on in January. So she's one of those people that they're now suspecting there were so many that aren't counted. And so that's been a real experience for me to navigate that. And oftentimes just find it hard to get through the day. You know, I spent 2-3 weeks full steam ahead with getting Ivy Tech into virtual learning. And when I paused, when it slowed down just a smidge, I had a hard time getting out of bed. So.
Absolutely. And I thank you so much for being vulnerable in this space. And my heart goes out to not only you, but all of the loved ones and the friends that were impacted by her loss. I think that's one thing when it comes to this time. People are experiencing grief very differently than they ever have before. And one of the things that I will definitely encourage each of you all on this call, or for anyone that knows her personally, is to please make sure that you are periodically checking in with her family. A lot of times when grief is right at the cusp, a lot of people are constantly reaching out and asking if anything is needed, but a lot of times those things slowly fade. And so months and months after the fact, holidays, things of that nature, a lot of times, people are thinking about you in spirit, but might not necessarily reach out physically. So please make sure that not only your counterpart, but for other individuals that have experienced loss during this time, to please lift them up and keep them encouraged, whether you know what to say or just want to send them some love and light. I really appreciate your story. Anyone else? And like I say, you could type in the chat. We have some encouraging words in the chat, so please make sure you're reading those as well. Anybody else want to unmute themselves and just check in? How are you doing during this time? So we have a message that I would like to read aloud, and I'll keep you confidential. But one of the participants mentioned still trying to navigate managing a relationship with my 80-year-old mom who lives alone. That is something that's extremely huge during this time as well, is that, again, we are navigating this new normal so differently, because a lot of times we are so accustomed to being able to make visits and things of that nature. And now we're having to find alternative ways to check in on our loved ones. Not everybody is technologically savvy. Not everybody prefers talking on the phone. And so that is something that definitely is an adjustment, particularly because all the engagement points at this time is virtual. So definitely keep it encouraged, particularly our seniors, particularly those who have a disability or able to just navigate the technological space. Please keep them in mind as well, and keep them encouraged during this time, for sure. Um, so one of the things that I wanted to kind of talk about a little bit as well during this presentation is when preparing, I really wanted to dive into what this unprecedented time looks like in regards to grief. So I think grief very commonly is talked in the space of death, but grief you can experience grief in a myriad of different things. So I'm just going to name off a couple of things that I have personally experienced. I've had clients who have experienced, as well as within my social circles, we have discussed. So financial issues, many of us are still struggling paycheck to paycheck prior to COVID. And now a lot of people have lost their jobs. They've been furloughed. People's finances look differently. So that's absolutely a point of grief and loss for a lot of people. Environmental concerns. So, of course, us going outside, just trying to navigate traditional spaces that we will occupy on a weekly basis, anything from going to the grocery store to going to a doctor's appointment looks very different now, as well as just the air. I've heard a lot of stories on the news around, the pollution has went down because not as many people are traveling and things of that nature. And in some respects, COVID has really allowed for like this reset for the universe. But I think at the same time, it's also a loss, because as much as it has been very helpful in the sense environmentally, it has also been such a grief and loss for individuals and for people that have experienced setbacks and negative consequences in terms of COVID. So I wanted to lift that up as well. Educational changes. We all are in educational space on this call. So the change from a lot of people going and really thriving and engaging in face-to-face interaction, where now all of a sudden you can only interact virtually, is very difficult for a lot of people. Now, I do want to recognize that there are a lot of you on this call who is thriving right in the educational space because you're accustomed to doing things virtually. And I am very excited for you, for sure. I don't think that has made a huge change for you, because you've been accustomed to the virtual space. But for a lot of people who is really relying on being able to connect on an individual level, on a face-to-face level, this educational shift is very challenging for them as well. Shifts in relationships. That's a huge grief and loss at this point. And I will be very transparent with you. There are a lot of individuals that are experiencing some potential separations and divorces during this time, because a lot of couples have not been at home this long by themselves with each other. A lot of times when you are accustomed to living your life and thriving and traveling and socializing, it really lifts your spirits. You're able to come back home and maybe be refreshed and renewed, or have like that opportunity to kind of transition from one space to another. But a lot of people, especially when you're living with someone, and let me not just say just for couples, but let me also speak for family members that might be staying with you during this time. There might be children involved where your relationship with your children are shifting. I think that is a huge grief and loss during this time, because a lot of people are starting to recognize that maybe their partner isn't who they seem to be. Maybe your children are having a difficult time transitioning to online learning, and now you're having to be a full-time educator, teacher, instructor. And so many of those relationships have changed quite a bit. There's many people that I have personally known, as well as others, that are now caregivers. You're dealing with someone who is in a vulnerable population that now is at home with you, or someone that has COVID that is now at home with you, and trying to navigate that space as well. So I wanted to definitely lift that up as well in terms of shifting in relationships. And of course, the traditional or the first point of grief that a lot of people consider, and that's the untimely death of loved ones. And I wanted to specifically speak on that because really I think one of the very unfortunate things about COVID is there has been so many people who have lost their lives, many people who are in vulnerable populations, many people that had pre-existing conditions, things of that nature. But we've also lost individuals during this time that had nothing to do with COVID, whether it's violence in the community, whether it's, auto accidents or some other type of accident, whether it's, some other type of illness. And I think that that is really important as well, because just to give you a little bit of information about me, I've been a hospital chaplain. And one of the things that I saw quite a bit is that process of preparing for your loved one's going, your loved one's celebration of life. And that looks so different now. Just a little bit of disclosure about myself. This past Saturday, I had to watch the loved one's funeral on the internet. And I know that many people are having to kind of grieve in that way as well. Like, you're not the select few people that's able to physically be present, or maybe there's concerns about physically being present, but being able to grieve through a screen is a very challenging thing for a lot of people. And a lot of funeral homes and mortuaries have also had to consider that as well with their protection and things of that nature. So excuse me, when I think of these unprecedented times, I definitely think of those things. So I wanted to lift all those things up individually, because I think that all of us as a collective on this call, we might not have experienced grief in the traditional sense, but we've absolutely experienced grief in some type of manner, whether you're an extrovert and now all of a sudden you've become an introvert without your permission, and you're having to navigate that, or the other things that I mentioned. So one of the things that makes grief so complicated is that no matter where your grief comes from, all of us grieve the same way. Okay, so I wanted to provide some context in the traditional sense in terms of what grief and loss looks like, for us to, again, just have a little bit of context with that. So the first thing I want to share with you is just a brief diagram around the stages of grief. So the first stage is denial. And this really is just the inability to wrap your head around the facts of the matter. Your loved one is gone. You're not able to go back to work physically. You have to social distance. You can't celebrate your birthday or celebrate graduation like you're used to. I can attest to this personally. I've had a birthday since COVID, and I had a plan to go out of the country, and all these plans were derailed due to this. And so again, just grieving the loss of the traditions that you are accustomed to celebrating and acknowledging looking very different. I want to even take a moment to acknowledge the class of 2020. This is a huge grief and loss for them. And we always lift up, the college graduates and maybe even high school graduates, but think about those transitions and those traditions that we're accustomed to. Kindergarten graduation was very huge in my community. So there's a lot of parents that's not able to get their baby to walk across the stage in their little cap and gown to go to first grade, or from preschool to kindergarten, or from fifth grade to middle school. So I think that those, again, is some losses to identify as well. So I wanted to lift up class of 2020 really briefly as well. One of the things that's very important about the denial stage is that people can remain in this stage for a various amounts of time. Okay, so when you're dealing with grief and loss, it's not a time frame on it. It definitely can vary from person to person. So I wanted to acknowledge that because some people go through these stages very quickly. Some people bounce around from stages or skip a stage, or some people remain in that stage for an extended period of time. The next one is anger. And again, as I mentioned, grief is the same, but the actions may be different. And this is one of those stages. So the anger might manifest into anxiety. That can be a form of anger for some people. You internalize, you isolate. That can also be a form as well. I think when I think of anger, and most people think of anger, they automatically go to the physical anger, right? The need to fight, the need to scream, the need to kind of have that physical manifestation of your frustration or your upset. So that's another piece. Bargaining. I'm going to read off a couple of bargains. And again, I want you to take care of yourself during this time. If this hits you in any particular way, please make sure that you acknowledge that personally. And you are also, again, welcome to type in the chat. So if the universe can take me instead, I want to take their place. They were too good of a person. It shouldn't have been them. What if I, whatever action, whatever takeaway from your life, maybe this situation would have been different or would have been better. So many people, bargains look very different. And again, it lasts for various amounts of time. But the thing that is very important to realize in this stage is that denial and bargaining could be anger. It can also intertwine with another step that I will be mentioning shortly. So, and then all the steps can happen at the same time. Again, it can look very different for many people. So I wanted to lift that up. Depression. So this one hits home for many of us on this call because it can have layers and it can have severities. So depression can manifest itself just to be tearful, be upset, have again that physical manifestation. You can be a very much of a reflective person. So you can be constantly replaying memories of that person, memories of that situation. In my community, we call it going down memory lane. So many of us can constantly do that. And a lot of times going down memory lane is painful. And so I think that that is one that's very important when it comes to what can lead to depression. It can be of a lifting up, of an inspiration of something positive, but it can also lead to depression for some folks that are in the midst of grief. Dreading facing the reality of the loss. I think that's one that was very huge during COVID because, again, it was one day, everything changed. We was hearing a lot of rumor mill. We weren't sure what was fact or what was fiction. And then all of a sudden we start getting emails. We start hearing it on social media or the news that all of a sudden stuff shifted and a lot of people weren't ready. So again, being able to face that. Again, it could also look like someone refusing or unable to get out of bed. That's a huge factor in depression. Unable to attend to their basic needs. So again, I'll confess personally, I think during COVID, I haven't been attending to my basic needs as I'm used to if I was to be doing my regular routine every day. So a lot of us have issues just getting out of bed each day. Right? Many people have difficulty attending to their hygiene because if they're home by themselves or they just with their loved ones, they feel a lot more comfortable. A lot of people are just dressing from the waist up. So the waist down, you're not quite sure, right? So again, those basic needs, eating, you would think that a lot of people will probably eat way too much at home, and that could be a fact for a lot of people. But also for many, they're not eating enough, or their financial situation looks differently and now they're unable to eat because the resource is not available. So again, just things to consider. Again, depression can also manifest in other ways. Again, trigger warning. It can manifest in addiction. Many people don't talk about that. There are many people that are currently going through recovery. And because recovery meetings are not available in the frequency as it once was, that person might really be struggling on the fence of going back to that addiction. And it can look very different for many of us. And because I want to be mindful of those who are on this call, I will not mention it individually. But one of the things that I will mention very generally is we are now more in a technological age than we were before. And I think one of the things that a lot of people don't consider is, as many people as having to use technology and computers, the addiction might be that. They might have to use the addiction to make their money, to support their family, to attend to their business. So again, something to consider. Suicidal ideations is a huge one when it comes to the area of grief, when it comes to depression. A lot of people can have many different thoughts during this time. Isolation is huge. Many folks that are on this call might be single, and you might live alone. And a lot of people, when you are an introvert, you might be built for COVID in terms of not having to socialize as much as you maybe had to prior to this. But now it's not a I choose to, it's now a I'm forced to. And a lot of people are unable to navigate that isolation. So the critical point in this step is to seek help if any of these symptoms last longer than a few days up to a week. And that's one of the things I want to recommend very, very much. Again, grief can look very differently for a lot of people, but specifically for depression, if you find yourself unable to see the light at the end of the tunnel, to see the sunshine and the rainbow after the storm, very much reach out to a professional. A lot of times it's okay to reach out to that friend or someone that can comfort you and support you. But a lot of times those types of symptoms require professional help. And so I really want to urge each of you all on this call to really lean into seeking professional services. It's no judgment. It's nothing that you should be ashamed of. And so that's one thing I want to lift up during this time as well. Don't let these feelings linger. If it does not let up by the time the event passes. So again, I work a lot with young adults. And so, they're used to graduation. So now graduation has passed and they're now able to kind of process to that next step. But if they're still on graduation and graduation happened 2 or 3 weeks ago, again, that's something that you also need to consider seeking professional help on. And finally, acceptance. So one thing I want to share with you is that just because you accept it just does not mean that you have to forget it. Okay, I'm going to repeat that. Just because you are accepting the situation does not mean that you have to forget the situation. It's not one and the same. And I wanted to lift that up because when we're dealing with grief and loss, a lot of people have, their ways of trying to communicate with people, and they'll say things like, "Oh girl, get over it. It's been a long time." Or, "Oh, this too shall pass." They'll say a lot of the things of that nature, but the reality is for some people, it doesn't work that way. Now, again, I don't want to lump everybody in the same category because we all are not the same. However, I do want to acknowledge that there are people that have to deal with their acceptance in their own unique way. So really the key is right here, especially during COVID, is we will never forget this point in our history. It's unprecedented. I'm a history buff. I think the last time we experienced something like this was like the Spanish flu that happened in the early 1900s. So our generations, this time in our history will be in history books. Our grandchildren, our great grandchildren, and moving on is going to read about and learn about this time. So again, our acceptance of this situation and how we have to navigate the new normal again is not just going through it, but we also don't have to forget what we're dealing with as well. One of the keys when it comes to going through these different changes is, again, you might skip some of these stages. You have to navigate how you're going to enter into the new normal. So again, depending on what kind of grief you're experiencing, the new normal could look very different. So again, what is life without this person? How am I going to move forward in this job? How am I going to navigate going out in public? So again, excuse me, many different things that we have to consider. So one of the things that I wanted to do is, if there is anybody on this call that has experienced a stage of grief, maybe you are currently experiencing a stage of grief. I wanted to take a moment. If you feel comfortable sharing that, you are welcome to unmute yourself. You can type that in the chat. But please let us know, what stage of grief do you think you are in currently, and how are you navigating that?
Well, for me, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, for me, it is. Now I am definitely I have company, but it's not because I wanted this type of company, but I am for those that are pre, current, and post-COVID, and because there are those that were dealing with this prior to now, and now and after, the Lord allows it to pass. But 2012, I dealt with my daughter's homegoing, and so I actually am an introvert masquerading as an extrovert. And so, I have to come out in order to take care of my business. And, but you won't know me really. And for those that don't know me, they would never know under the mask, under the physical mask that we wear. You have no clue of if I'm smiling or not. But you reach out and your heart goes out to others, but that the way you feel about how people feel and what they are going through, everybody does not feel like that. And I didn't get it. I wasn't getting it, and for those that think they get it, you have to forgive them when you know you're not feeling it. You forgive them for the foolish things and unlearned things and the way that they present themselves concerning your definite loss. And now it's like all of a sudden everyone is so in tune about loss. Well, it was going on prior to now, so it was going on, and my empathy and sympathy still goes out to those that are going through this trying time, but what about those that were going through prior to now? So, and have been dealing and wrestling with oppression, depression, suppression, repression, and aggression. So it's like, oh, you mean to tell me, Christ Jesus, this is an awakening? So I'm looking at things are really actually being prioritized at this point. And I understand what may be important to someone else may not, their priority may not be what another person's priority is, but this is a prioritizing time at this particular time. And that may sound cold to people, but that is the truth. That's been the truth. And so, yeah, the anger, the three stages that you were talking about concerning grief, I've been dealing with depression so long that it is, I know how to, I know how to navigate it in front of others. They would never even know. But as soon as I come through that door, then the partner picks up with me at home. And you know, people are, the pace of getting things done and, you know, and taking care of business and, you know, people, you know, you don't even tell them. You know why? Because they're earnestly trying to carry on with their life. So you don't stop them and tell them anything. Even when they ask you, you just keep it on a light note because they're not ready for the heavy.
Absolutely. And one thing that I would say is, first of all, just thank you for sharing that, because you're absolutely right. I think that because of COVID, a lot of people are having a sense of understanding of what a lot of people have been experiencing for a long time. I think that it can definitely make a lot of people who have experienced losses due to illnesses prior to this, you know, feel like, okay, now it's getting more of a public acceptance. Now people, it's more of a public outcry, more of knowledge around it. It's a lot of attention being brought to it. And I definitely understand that. I think that it's just interesting the time that we're in right now, because a lot of people that's been in a place of privilege prior to COVID is now starting to slowly possibly get a glimpse into what it's like to be underserved, or what it's like to be in situations where you don't have resources. It's just a really interesting time. And I think everything that you're experiencing, I acknowledge that. I acknowledge this is it's a challenging time to be in. And one of the things I will tell you is, again, no one will ever understand what it's like to be in your shoes. No one would ever be able to walk around trying to navigate life after not only your loss, but all the things that you've experienced leading up to that, all the things you're experiencing after the fact. Because I think one of the things when we talk about grief and loss in an umbrella, we're not only just talking about the specific event, right? So you could have a one-time event, you could have several events, but you're always also talking about the navigation, second to minute to hour to day to weeks to months to years, you know. And so I think it's really important. Again, I appreciate what you said, because I think a lot of people kind of wear this kind of proverbial mask all the time. I think that many people that are in marginalized spaces wear the mask on a constant basis, and they go home and they could take that mask off and they could truly be their authentic selves, you know. So I think that exactly what you're mentioning around just even having to figure out how to navigate in spaces when you're still trying to process what you're dealing with. I definitely acknowledge that. And I think that that's one thing that has been so complicated during this time. And again, I want to be transparent with each of you on this call, because again, this is a safe space. As I'm asking you to be vulnerable, I'll be vulnerable with you. I think one of the things that has really been challenging for me during this time is, again, this is not new, right? The economic issues, the environmental issues, people losing jobs, people losing their life, having illnesses, lack of health care. I mean, we can just go down the list, right? This is not a new thing. And I think that it's really interesting that now it's being lifted up in the way that a lot of things are not lifted up prior to this. I'll just put this out there briefly because I want to make sure that I'm staying on the course of the conversation, and I'm definitely willing to dive into topic matters however the conversation leads. But, you know, as you all can see, I'm of a certain persuasion. Okay. I'm a woman. I'm a Black woman, right? I've been privileged and fortunate enough to be educated, right? I'm in a certain professional status. And so this whole navigation and teetering between, you know, the haves and the have nots and the educated and the uneducated and, you know, all those things, it's mind boggling, right? And I have to be honest. I was just on a call last night with the family that lost their loved one recently due to police violence. And I had to get off that call and I was like, you know what? I need to just take a moment. I just need to get away. I can't talk to nobody else tonight. I just need a moment to just process that, because I think that that's one of the challenges with grief, right? Now, again, did I know this young lady? No. Do I identify with her? Absolutely, because she looks like me, right? It could have easily been me, right? It could have easily been anyone on this call or your loved ones, people in your community, et cetera, et cetera. So I say all that to say that I think when it comes to grief and loss, we have to figure out how to navigate that in a way that is healthy for us, right? We have to figure out how to navigate that so that we can be able to not only push through to make our family proud, our community proud, you know, to fulfill our dreams, all the things that we hope for, right, in this life. But I think at the same time, I never want to just not acknowledge the fact that many of us are dealing with grief and loss in a completely different fashion than other people, right? So all of us deal with grief in some type of way, but at the same time, a lot of us are taught, you know, and I think you mentioned this very beautifully. A lot of us are very spiritual and religious. So our help, right, our coping skill comes from, you know, the text. It comes from hearing that spiritual advisor. It comes from being in engagement with that community. It can look like that. It can look for like going to a sacred space and whatever that looks like for you. It can go to going to seek professional help. It can look very different ways for many different people, but I think the very most important thing is that you acknowledge that there is something that is going on with you that you really need to attend to, right? You need to be able to seek out who is able to help in a positive way. Because one of the things that I always tell people is that everybody ain't created equal, right? All sacred spaces aren't created equal. All professionals are created equal. Every job ain't created equal. And so it's key for all of us to be able to dig deep inside of ourselves and figure out what is the best thing for me. And I think at the same time, it's really important too that your grief isn't going to stop. It might look different, right? It might lift up after a while. It might not be as heavy, but the grief is still there. And so I didn't want to, you know, linger on that piece, but I wanted to make sure that I was intentional by saying that in this presentation, is that grief looks different for everybody. Everybody isn't taught to go to a therapist. Okay. Again, I'm of a certain persuasion, and in my community, me being a therapist, me going to school to be a therapist, I got laughed at. Okay. I know that there are people that unfortunately don't look like me that will come seek me out, because this is something, again, that wasn't embedded into wellness, right? Being well might look different for somebody, as well as going to get your checkups, you know, just like going and eat healthy foods. It might look different for many people, but I think one of the very most important things when it comes to the grief and loss piece is to make sure that you are not denying that you are in this space. Don't deny yourself, because again, a lot of times people deny themselves, or they you know, suffocated, they put it to the back burner. Oh, it ain't that important, I still got to move on, and they're suffering in silence. And that mask that you were talking about, that you have to put on and kind of smile your way through the day and work your way through the day, and then you get home and you just crying on the inside. A lot of people have to mask those feelings, because as you mentioned, a lot of people will not understand. They won't understand what you're dealing with. And a lot of people, again, aren't trained to be empathetic and not sympathetic. again, that's a whole nother conversation for another day. I won't get on to that. But what I wanted to do, if I'm allowed, is I know there's been a couple of people in the chat, but if there's anyone else that wants to kind of talk about what stage of grief you feel like you are in right now, you're welcome to. But I also wanted to lift the conversation as well, for anybody that maybe has gotten through the stages of grief, and what are you doing to take care of yourself, that maybe you could provide a resource and an encouragement for those on the call. So I'll pause here and feel free.
Oh, hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Alicia. And I have 3 children right now, 3 girls, 7, 6, and 4. But I would have had a 9-year-old as well. But I lost my son in 2012, and I have literally been battling depression since then, because it's really rough to have to bury your child. It's rough, and but I was getting to a place where I can, function while still dealing with it, and my girls and I, we were homeless for a while before we moved to Indiana, and but I got it back on track. We moved to Indiana, we got our own place, everything was going smooth, and then everything stopped going smooth, and we were homeless again, but not really homeless. Like, I still had my place. Wait, everything was going good. They was in school. I started school. I was doing great. I got a 4.0 my first semester. I'm in the honors course. Everything was going great. And then my man lost his job, and my hours were short, so we couldn't pay our light bill. Our lights got cut off, and it was wintertime. We couldn't live here, but we couldn't exactly lose our place, because when we cut our lights back on, we need a place to go home to. So we were still paying rent here, and that didn't exactly leave money to save for the light bill. So we were homeless from November to March. We finally were able to come home in March. But I didn't let that get me down at that time. Kids were still, we had a car, and even when our car broke down, my sister and my brother, who we were living with, they fit us into their schedule so that I can still get to school, so that my kids can get to school, so that Ryan can get to his job that he had just got. Things were still going as they needed to go. And then we finally got home, and then COVID hit. And that's when things went really downhill for me. Like, I am now on depression meds. I've never had to be on them before, but now I am. My man lost his job because of COVID. Work was slow. They had to let him go. I had gotten sick, not COVID, but I had caught a cold, and I work in healthcare. I can't go to work if I'm coughing, because it's a scare and it's a risk for my residents. And the kids can't go to school. So I'm home, and I have to hurry up and get better, because he didn't have a job. He has one now, but he didn't have one. But I have to hurry up and get better, because I have to go to work, because we need money, and then so I have to work more hours. I have to make sure that my kids complete their schoolwork so that they don't get held back. My 7-year-old, she's in first grade. She was on the retention list before COVID hit. I got her off, so I know I'm in the right program. I'm meant to be a teacher. I got my kid off the retention list. Amen for that. But while trying to maintain my household, school is really important to me. But trying to maintain the household, I couldn't maintain it. And this semester is not going as I would have hoped. And then I lost my grandmother last month, and she's one of the most important people in my life, and she's never had a hospital stay where we could not be with her, and she died by herself, and that hurts. And another close family friend who let us stay with her when me and my girls were homeless, she also died like a week later. So it's been a lot, but I'm still, I feel like I'm still in the depression phase. I know for a fact that I am, but I also know that it's not. I see a tunnel. I mean, I see the light. I see the light. And how I got there is I talked to my doctor. This is not okay. I'm not me, and I need help. And I'm taking my meds, and they're helping. And also, I sat down, and I know that if things had been going how they were before COVID hit, everything would be fine. Everything would have been fine. I would have still been on Dean's list, kids would have been good, everything would have been fine. But I had no control over it. I had no control over COVID. I did not know it was coming. I can't snap my fingers and make everybody get better and life gets back to normal. So I have learned to accept that, and I planned starting from here. No, I will not get a 4.0 this semester, but I also will not get an F in every class. I will not fail every class. I will not get so low a GPA that it will affect my entire one. I will still graduate on time because I'm going to do what I have to do from now on to make sure that I get what I want for my life done. And I just gotta learn how to change what I can. I can't change everything. So there's a prayer. I don't know a word for it. The Serenity Prayer, I believe it's called. That is in conjunction with the medicine. She was right. If you feel like you need to go talk to someone, talk to a professional, do it. That is important because even the Serenity Prayer won't help if that main component isn't taken care of. If you need to speak to a professional, go speak to a professional, but also realize that some things are not in your control, and don't drive yourself crazy trying to control those things. Just take care of what you can, and everything else will fall into place. And I'm done now. I'm done.
You know what? I I'm so I'm so moved over here. I have to just be completely transparent. I'm so appreciative to you that you felt led to share, that you were strong enough to share. Um, I think that's the thing about some folks, like we're built to not break, no matter what we go through, no matter how much could potentially come against us that would make us feel like, you know what, I'm I tap out. I'm so, first of all, I'm proud of you because not everybody can overcome those kind of obstacles. Okay, like it's huge. It's huge. And again, a lot of stuff has happened that's like one thing after another, after another, after another, and yet you still was keeping your family first. You still was keeping your education first. You still was trying to keep your eyes on the prize. That's amazing. It's amazing. Absolutely, you are an overcomer. You are a leader. You are you are what people should attain to in terms of strength, modeling resilience. It's huge, and I'm so grateful to have had an opportunity to like be in space with you, because I think that that's one thing that a lot of us don't even realize. There are so many people that we just pass by on a daily basis that is going through so much, but yet they keep a smile. They are engaged in work. They're helping other people, and you never know, they might be going without. And I think that that's huge. And I'm so appreciative to you. I'm so proud of you. I'm honored to be just in this virtual space with you. I lift you up. I'm gonna continue to keep lifting you up. You know, I will encourage everyone that's on this call that knows this young lady. If you have some extra, if you have some resource, something that can be of help to her during this time, please send it her way. Because I think that when it comes to community, we need to support one another. We can't continue to be selfish. I think this COVID has really dived into a whole lot of people. You can't continue to be selfish. You can't continue to be siloed, only helping the folks that doesn't help you. It can't work like that anymore. We have to be communal. And if we have been communal before, be more communal. Like, let the spirit lead you. I'm so grateful again to you for sharing, because again, many people are not able to go through what you went through and be able to make it on the other side and talk about it. I want you to know, and I'm appreciative for you, even just pouring your heart out to us, because again, all of us on this call are experiencing things very differently. But I know that somebody is going to be touched by that, not just by your story, but the story that was shared earlier. Somebody's going to be touched by that. It's going to move somebody in a way of like, you know what, she made it through. Let me go ahead and press just one more moment. Let me just find the energy to just get through just this one more obstacle. And I think that that's the beauty of grace. I think that's the beauty of resilience. That's leadership. And I'm honored to be in space with you. Thank you so much. I want to share some resources really quickly with you, just to make sure that we're getting everything that we need out of this conversation. And I want to be able to circle back at the end if there's any other comments or questions. So please make sure, if you are feeling led to share, if you are feeling compelled to just kind of navigate some spaces, please feel free to type it in the chat, or just be prepared to mute in just a moment. So really quickly, again, I just want to share just a couple of resources with you. You all are welcome to, if you want to screenshot any of these things or anything like that, you're more than welcome to do that for sure. So again, I wanted to highlight the stages of grief, because I think this can be important for you and your loved ones to review, because again, you can bounce from one place to another, but I think it's important for you to just have some type of navigation in terms of what are you dealing with. So again, I just want to share just a few resources with you today. Again, these are things you can add to your toolbox. So if you got a phone, if you're not on it, you could take a picture of this, you could screenshot it, whatever will be helpful for you. These are some websites that you can find affordable and mental health professionals in your area. So one of the things that I always tell people is that it's important to really do some research on the people that you're going to be vulnerable with. it's important to be able to find someone who understands your situation, find someone that can help you navigate and is not going to put their own stuff on you. Okay. So all these websites, they have photos and they also have descriptions of mental health professional specialty areas. So again, not all mental health professionals are created equal, and not everybody can deal with some of the issues that a lot of us are dealing with. So I think it's very important for you to find that person that's right for you. I will encourage you to review these sites and really reflect on what you need from a mental health professional. So some folks need someone that identifies with them culturally and environmentally. And I think that one of the pieces that's really important is a lot of times if you don't find the right mental health professional for you, it could be more traumatizing than helpful. So again, I wanted to lift that up here as well. Sometimes it's important for their professional to maybe be in relationships, be currently coupled, maybe have children, because that's the experience that you have. Again, there are so much of a variety of mental health professionals out there. There are folks even prior to COVID that was doing virtual sessions. I think COVID has now made all mental health professionals to lean into that direction. And even after all this has passed, if this is a more convenient medium for you, make sure that you are researching that with your mental health professional. Another really quick tip for you all that's on this call, because again, I want to be intentional of highlighting every possible factor in this conversation, is that many of us cannot afford therapy. You know, many of us cannot pay out of pocket for mental health services. Some of us might be insured and maybe our annual, fees maybe will offset maybe being able to get mental health services, like we haven't made our deductible yet and things of that nature. Maybe it's not wise for us to use our insurance, and some of us might not have insurance at all. And so I would definitely encourage you when you go on these sites to look at who uses a sliding fee scale. Okay, so sliding fee scale, every professional can have an opportunity to provide you some low-cost services if your financial situation does not deem the ability to be able to pay full fee. So do not let the money stop you from getting the services that you need. Okay. Another thing is there are some websites that specifically provides low-cost services. So make sure that you're looking at that as well. Wanted to also give you all my information as well. So Danielle mentioned earlier that I currently live in Kentucky, but I also provide services in Indiana. So don't be afraid to contact me if you feel so led. If you live on the Illinois cusp, I can also provide services to you as well. We can definitely talk offline. If you have questions, if you just need to debrief and process some things, I'm also more than happy to give you any resources that might be helpful for you. So please feel free to screenshot my information. You could take a quick picture of it. If you just have any additional questions, follow me on social media. I'm a person, I believe in assisting the underserved and the marginalized. That's my population. That's where my care is. And so I'm always providing free resources through social media. I'll always do calls like this. If the spirit leads me, I might get on Facebook Live and just provide some quick little tips and get off. So I promise you it won't be a whole hour or things of that nature, but sometimes you might just need a quick refresher. So please feel free, like I said, to follow me on social media. You might want to learn more about me and what I do. So you're more than welcome for that as well. So again, what I want to do really quickly, this concludes my formal presentation, but I wanted to make sure that, again, I left space for if people had questions, if they had comments, if They just need to process the information that was presented. But before I formally end, I wanted to again thank the Lake County Diversity, Equity, and Belonging Committee for extending the invitation to me. I'm always available to you all. Just let me know. You can email me, go to my website. I'm always a resource, despite the fact that I'm not an Ivy Tech employee or a formal Ivy Tech service. So I thank you all so much. Happy Mental Health Awareness Month. Let this be a call to action for you to attend to your mental health. Check in with yourself, get the attention that you need for everything that you needed. And again, I'm in such gratitude to be in space with you all. So just thank you so very much. And I'm going to formally hand it back over to Danielle. If you all have any questions, I am here. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I can stay on if you all want to talk offline. So just thank you so very much.